You are listening to 107.9 WRFA LP in Jamestown, New York. Welcome to the debate tonight featuring the candidates for Chautauqua County Executive. This debate will feature incumbent County Executive Paul P.J. Wendel of Lakewood, who is running on the Republican and Conservative ticket. Norm Green of DeWittville is running on the Democratic line. I'm Julia Ciesla-Hanley, I'm the WRFA Public Affairs Director, and I'm being joined tonight by media partners Terry Frank of Media One Group's WJTN and Justin Gould of WNY News Now. This event is being broadcast live on 107.9 FM and streaming live on WRFALP.com. You can also watch the live stream of this debate on media partner WNY News Now's Facebook page and WNYNewsNow.com/live. Our other media partner, WJTN and WRFA, will broadcast this debate at a later date. I believe that will be this Saturday. This debate is also being made possible through funding from the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Our panel will pose a series of questions to the candidates to discuss, and each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one question to the other. The candidates will be given 90 seconds each for an opening statement. Afterwards, they will have up to 60 seconds to respond to each question, along with 60 seconds for any rebuttals. If a candidate runs out of time, our official timekeeper, Gavin Paternity, will notify the candidate with the following sound. They will then have 5 seconds to wrap up, at which point, if needed, I will cut them off nicely. Also, you will both be notified when you have 30 seconds remaining on your clock with a sign from Mr. Paternity. And let's begin. We did a coin toss at the beginning for determining the order for opening statements. Mr. Green said he would like to go first, and then we'll go to Mr. Wendel. So we'll rotate questions after that. So Mr. Green, you have, I apologize. I think you have 3 minutes for your opening remarks, not 90.
I was ready for 90 seconds.
No, it's 90 seconds. So you have 3 minutes.
It's great to be here. It's great that we still have a great media in Chautauqua County that keeps us all accountable. Thank you to all of you. I've always started out every presentation that I've had so far, starting out with my opponent, P.J. Wendel's a good guy. You know, we don't have the kind of politics they have in Washington, D.C., where we have the nastiness. If P.J. Wendel is the elected county executive, I'll be his biggest fan, I promise you that. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Fredonia. My parents were working class people. My grandparents also assisted in raising me, also working class people. My great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents came from the Pomfret area, and so it's a long time in Chautauqua County. Everybody in my family enlisted in the United States Army. Everybody got brown checks in the mail. I didn't understand. I thought everybody got brown checks, just the ones that were wounded. So we had a series of people in my family that were wounded, had Purple Hearts, and very, very proud of that. And so when I graduated from high school, there was no doubt what I needed to do, and that was enlist in the United States Army. From there, after the Army, I went to college on the GI Bill. I was employed by Brand Names, which was a Western New York retailer, for nearly 20 years, and then I spent 22 years as election commissioner. In all cases, I have been a person that watches the budget, make sure that spending is done as it should be. When I was a manager of Brand Names, that was absolutely demanded of us. As an election commissioner, we had a fairly flat budget over the last decade since we brought new voting technology. And certainly when I was the Ellicott Town Councilman for 4 years, the year before I got there, budget was 6% increase. The year I got there, it was 0. The second year was 0. The third year it was 0. The fourth year it was 0. Because I demanded that. And for the decade after I left the Ellicott Town Council, they maintained a no tax increase budget. Pat Tyler was the supervisor, and so that's who I've always been. I've been a person of watching the dollar and making sure that, including it as part of watching the dollar, making sure that we still delivered services, we didn't lay off people, we continued to make things happen in new and useful and unique ways for the people of this county.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Wendel, you have 3 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you. And again, it's a pleasure being here this evening. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be with you. I'm County Executive P.J. Wendel. I stood here before you a year ago in the same forum. I shared my vision, I shared my commitment, and expressed my dedication to the residents of this county. Our residents need strong, proven leadership. I am a lifelong resident, and as such, I have demonstrated my ability to work across the aisle, create collaboration, and establish networks of individuals. Those networks have produced very sound economic decisions that have provided success, created growth and prosperity here in Chautauqua County. Leadership has been a catchphrase for this campaign. Under my leadership, we have met the challenges of COVID, reinvented how we do business, and provided our residents with a lean and efficient county government. Last year, I spoke of fiscal responsibility. We accomplished that with a sound, fiscally responsive county budget for the second year in a row, providing tax relief. I presented a tax rate reduction to county residents for the second year. I spoke of our workforce development that is increasing by utilizing businesses, connecting them with JCC, the P-Tech Academy, to foster curriculum and courses of study that will facilitate skills needed to fill our jobs and create success. I bring 33 years of the fire service, 25 years as an educator and administrator, 27 years as an EMT, and 14 years as an elected official. I have been nominated and appointed to the FCC Intergovernmental Advisory Committee as one of only 3 elected county officials nationwide. I've been this year promoted to the NYMER, New York State Municipal Insurance Reciprocal, as their Board of Governors member. As your county executive, I took a proactive approach to engage local leadership from cities, towns, and villages, along with town and village DPW, law enforcement agencies, and local EMS providers that facilitated dialogues and collaboration. With a great degree of sincerity, I would like to simply say thank you for awarding me this opportunity to represent you. And it is that experience as a proven leader that I will use to continue to guide our county to new heights and ensure a vision that will create county government that will work for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wendel. We will now move to our panel questions, and each question candidates will be given up to 90 seconds for their initial response and then 60 seconds each for a rebuttal. The first question that we will ask is the only question provided to candidates ahead of time, and that question is, why are you running for county executive? And we'll start with Mr. Wendel.
Thank you. So why am I running for county executive? Quite simply, I love my job. There isn't a day that I don't wake up and look forward to what the day has in store for me. I'm running for the future of Chautauqua County. It is bright, and I'm committed to taking us to the next level. I'm running for my future, for my children's future, for my parents' future, and the future of every resident that I represent. When the pandemic hit, I was in office for 3 months. And as we worked through this pandemic with other state leaders and county executives across the state, we realized one thing. We were all in the same playing field. We had the same experience, which was zero. But what has happened is I have emerged as one of the leaders of the New York State County Executives Association and NYSAC, the New York State Association of Counties. I was vocal, yet attentive. I was firm, yet able to adapt to the ever-changing environment. I learned to embrace the challenges and seek resolutions not only within Chautauqua County, but across the state. I formed the Border County Coalition. This is a weekly meeting of the 9 counties that bordered 253 miles of Pennsylvania to understand the problems and difficulty, share any solutions and commonalities we faced as leaders. I am running to continue to make Chautauqua County a beacon of light for development and lead the way as the great gateway to the Empire State.
Thank you, Mr. Wendel. Mr. Green, same question. Why are you running for county executive?
Thank you. We obviously have met before. My opponent before says that, I'm negative. And yes, I am negative. I'm negative about what's happened, what has taken place so far in the county. Population is decreasing. Poverty is increasing. My opponent didn't mention that one time. That's the biggest. These are the 2 biggest issues. They're in our face. 1 out of 5 people in Chautauqua County is living in poverty, and we need to do something about it. We need to redirect the leadership in the county. You can put it on a sign and say you're a strong leader, but that doesn't make you a strong leader. I've been thinking, that we really need strong leadership in Chautauqua County. We need somebody that's going to speak not from the prepared notes, but is going to speak from from the brain and from the heart. heart. We need to have somebody that is going to be truly able to lead us. How do we reverse the population losses, and how do we reverse poverty? I will hopefully have the opportunity to talk about that during tonight's session.
Thank you. Mr. Wendell, you have 60 seconds for a rebuttal if you choose.
Well, I think it's interesting. My opponent talks about the concerns, but yet in an article published in the Post-Journal of 2014, the same statements were reoccurring. We're facing poverty, 1 out of every 5, and it's the Democrats absolutely wish the best and hoping we turn this around. So we're standing here some 7 years later with the same statements. We're looking at the same issues. We're looking at the rhetorical problems that we come back and face. These things are changing. Population is changing, obviously, but we're looking at talent attraction, we're looking at retention, and we're looking to shift that change and that paradigm to keeping kids here. Developing our communities will keep our children here. We need to ask ourselves, why are we telling our kids they need to leave? And we need to correct those actions and correct the very reasons we're telling them they need to leave.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Green, do you have a rebuttal? If you
The rebuttal is, goes to our discussions about workforce development. You talk about our kids. We need to get at our children at a much earlier age. Our Industrial Development Agency on their website talks about that they're in the schools, but we need to be there at the 8th grade, and we need to be telling the people that want to stay in Chautauqua County, these children that we want to stay in Chautauqua County, what kind of courses they're going to need to take, what kind of education they're going to need to be able to enter the workforce immediately. There's jobs in Chautauqua County. We know there's jobs. We haven't prepared our population for the jobs.
Thank you.
I'll ask the second question here. Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. Green has been critical of County Executive Wendel's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic locally. I will ask Mr. Green to go first. What would you have done differently? And for Mr. Wendell, hindsight's always 20/20. What would you have done differently?
Yeah.
Mr. Green first.
I mean, for starters, I would have been answering the phone. Our health department in our county during the pandemic, when people needed assistance, they were not answering the phone. I read from the website of the health department. The Chautauqua County Department of Health is not making vaccination appointments over the phone at this time. Please do not call or email our office for vaccine scheduling. I worked at the Board of Elections. We were getting calls. Everybody was getting calls, but the county wasn't taking the calls. And so there wasn't leadership, and we could go on. This could be the whole night about the failure in leadership. And as far as battling COVID-19, we're amongst the worst in the state. It's been a failure, and we certainly needed somebody that was going to lead, was going to answer the phone call. People were calling, and no one was answering.
Mr. Wendell, have you been answering your phone?
Of course. You hear some of my constituents surprised that I'll call at 4:30, 5 o'clock. My office, there wasn't a need. You have to remember that during the midst of the pandemic, everybody was calling the health department for every reason. We have to go back. If we're going to focus on specifically the scheduling of the vaccine was like the Hunger Games. There was minimal vaccine and thousands of people that wanted to get vaccinated. But our health department did a yeoman's job of not only contact tracing, not only daily calls. Thousands of people were being contacted by the health department on a daily basis. And when the vaccine was rolled out, we had no assistance from the state of New York. I asked many times, could we please get a vaccination hub? Could we please get a mass vac site here in the county? Never did it happen. But yet our county government, our health department did an amazing job at vaccinating over 50,000 plus people, continuing through this. The question is, hindsight, would I have changed anything? I would say no, because we made the right decisions with the right information we had at that time. And when you look, we talked about the failures. Chautauqua County had very little cases. When this started, we closed, and we're closed for over a week with no positive cases. And as everyone was ramping up, our cases were low. I listened, and I made sure that I was following the guidance of other counties and taking their lead to make sure we did not make those mistakes should those large numbers of infection come to Chautauqua County.
Mr. Green, a rebuttal?
Oh, well, obviously, with over 200 dead as of, I believe, yesterday, it hasn't been a great situation. We've had a county executive by leadership failure, telling people wearing a mask is an option. It's a personal choice. Getting vaccinated is a personal choice. You know, you need to have a leader that tells you, hey, everybody, we need to get vaccinated. You need to mask up. We need to protect our citizens. Didn't have it.
Mr. Wendel, I'm going to give you a moment here to defend yourself.
Well, certainly. I think it's unique. We're talking about the pandemic. I beg to differ. We're talking about since Governor Cuomo lifted the mask mandate in June. If you'll notice that when the masking happened, quite honestly, amongst our team, we wanted to do this about a week to 2 weeks before the governor did. My daughter was in the Czech Republic and said, Dad, everyone's wearing a mask over here. Reached out to my team. We agreed in consensus. We would recommend the masking. And within the week, the governor did. So we followed that vehemently and adamantly everywhere I was in public, answering fire calls, going to Wegmans. You would not see me without my mask. At the end, when I was vaccinated, many, many thousands of people were vaccinated. We followed the governor's guidance when we lifted the mandate and allowed people to exercise their own judgment.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. The county continues to lose residents, with the census just reporting this year that the head count decreased by over 7,000 people. Is there anything you can do as county executive to address this and maybe inspire young people to stay? We'll start with Mr. Wendel.
Well, it's unique you said that because this afternoon I attended the Lake Erie Governmental Council, which is another group that I was part in forming with the commissioner from Warren County, also a candidate for Erie County Erie County Executive in Pennsylvania. And what we determined was, you know, what we need to do is ask our children and ask ourselves, why are we telling our kids to leave? You know, why are we having these problems? And then we need to correct those problems. We have jobs here in Chautauqua County. What we're failing to realize, 20 years ago, we could say, yes, there were no jobs. But now we realize our baby boom generation are retiring. I spoke to the manager of Producto. 25 individuals with 40 or more years of experience have retired. We need to replace those. Those jobs are there. We no longer need to tell our children that the jobs aren't here in Chautauqua County. They are. They're here and they're robust and they're vibrant. SKF, I've talked to management. We'll hire people right off the street. I went out to S. House in Silver Creek. The business has been there 150 plus years. We need 25 welders. We can hire them right now on the spot. So what we need to do is encourage our students to stay. We need to encourage our children to stay. Our communities are vibrant. We need to strengthen them. We need to make them safer. And we need to tell our kids to stay here in Chautauqua County. There's no reason to leave.
Thank you. Mr. Green, anything you can do to inspire our youth to stay local?
Well, you know, first I have to rebut just 1 second here. 14 years of being in government, and he's talking about the future. He's talking about what we can do. Well, we didn't do it. We need to start doing workforce development. We're not just talking about workforce development, and we need to be marrying people up with jobs. I mean, I've been hearing about welding, jobs all of my life. I mean, where have we been on developing welding? And another thing that I think that we should be looking at is CDL school. We should be looking at training truck drivers. We should be a leader in the United States of America. I mean, it's a perfect opportunity. We need truck drivers in the United States of America. Why aren't we training them right here in Chautauqua County? We need new ideas, not just the same ideas that we've had before, but workforce development, meaning that everybody admits we have jobs available, and we need to marry those jobs up, and that takes leadership.
Mr. Wendel, would you like to rebut?
Well, certainly. Some of the things we're looking at last year in August, we had 44,300 people employed in Chautauqua County. This year, 47,000 plus people employed here in Chautauqua County. July of this year, 2,085 jobs were open. There's now 1,745. We are marrying people with those jobs. What's interesting is even on my opponent's webpage, Facebook said, we need to strengthen what we're already doing for workforce development, which means we're already doing it. We're working on it. Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're having to turn around 20 plus years of people leaving, and now we're replacing those people with 20 to 40 years of experience. We're going to do that. We need to let our children know the jobs are here, and we will get them in touch with the jobs where they can have a family, have a career, and stay right here in Chautauqua County.
Even though I've been here for a long time, and I've been the election commissioner for I'm retired now for the past 22 years. I wasn't the one working on the problem. I'm the new guy on the block. You know, again, the county executive, every time we meet, he talks about the things we're going to do. You know, it's time to do something, and the leadership has not been. It's a great guy, but he's failed in leadership. Workforce, we've had these jobs that are available, and nobody's married these jobs. He says we're going to marry them, but we haven't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Next question, we're going to talk about money. The county has received several large streams of one-time funding coming in between the American Rescue Plan, and now we've also heard about opioid settlement monies that's coming from New York State. Can you please cite specific goals for allocating these funds? And we'll start with Mr. Green.
The opioid money, 100%, we agree, needs to go to solving the problem. The biggest problem that we have in solving the issue is beds. When someone calls a telephone number, we can't just have an appointment to go in and see a counselor. We need to get these people into a recovery. And that means we need to have beds, and we do have that on a limited basis, but we certainly hasn't been a concentration of government in Chautauqua County. My father was an alcoholic, and my father was a person who mentored, who was a sponsor for hundreds of people. I have people that come up to me all the time and say, "Dad, your dad saved my life." And that's the kind of thing that we need. We need to have, how many times, my father wasn't home for dinner because he was taking some alcoholic up to Bryland and Buffalo. We need beds in Chautauqua County, not just for the drugs, but for the alcoholism, for all of our problems.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wendel, specific goals for either ARPA or the opioid settlements?
Well, I think the ARPA funding is evident. We spent a lot of time looking at the ARPA funding. We have allocated that $24.6 million. We've done it wisely. We haven't focused on any one area. We have done a lot of different activities throughout the county. We've looked at purchasing equipment that will be used across this county. Because, for example, in the village of Silver Creek, when they had an ice jam, we would have to wait for the state to bring in a long-armed excavator. We're purchasing a long-arm excavator that we can get that within hours to prevent the flooding in Silver Creek. We have a great deal of earth that was brought in during the last storm, that's 100-year storm that happened 2 years in a row in Barcelona. 3 acres of material is there. The village and town of Westfield had to rent an excavator $5,000 a week. We can provide that service with them. So the ARPA monies are being funneled to a way that we share them with everybody, and people across the county are being helped. If, for example, $360,000 are being spent on 2 pieces of detection equipment in the jail, what is that going to do? It's going to prevent overdoses and prevent drugs and contraband from getting in to our jails. One of the things we talked about, we were going to mention beds. The unique problem about beds is in New York State, whether it's drug or alcohol treatment, you are not required to stay. You can come in one day, walk out the next. So we do have beds, and the recurrence of our patients is a problem that we are working on, and there is a group ready to move into the North County to help us solve that.
Mr. Green, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, we caught him in a non-truth. And $8 million, 1/3 of the ARPA money, is being spent on a sewage treatment line on the western side of Chautauqua Lake that will not measurably increase the water quality of Chautauqua Lake. If you want to increase the water quality of Chautauqua Lake, you should think about getting rid of the fertilizers and stop people in Lakewood from making their lawns so green. But that line, we have so many problems in Chautauqua County, and and that particular line is going to solve so little of the trouble. But the problem is that he sits right here and he says, "Oh, it's spread all over Chautauqua County." It was an easy one. Just threw me a softball. $8 million is being spent. 1/3 is being spent on a sewage treatment line that's going to service a couple hundred people.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a rebuttal?
Well, certainly. You know, we talked about this. Last week it was 12 millionaires from Cleveland or Pittsburgh. But one of the things that's interesting is we talked about 10 years ago, there was a developer coming into Stowe. And, you know, they wanted to come in, but no infrastructure. We're looking at water and we're looking at sewer. So what is that going to do? It's going to bring in jobs to build the building. It's going to bring in contractors, electricians, and plumbers. But my opponent said something calling it the Field of Dreams. Well, here we had planners coming in from all over the state who come in and said, wow, we didn't realize the interesting venues and spaces. Jamestown is a best kept secret for planning circles in New York State. You build it, this group said they will come. End goal should be 1,000+ person facility to house statewide conventions. That's what that $8 million will bring.
You give me $8 million for Jamestown, and we'll get a lot more people than you're talking about.
Gentlemen, we need to move on to a different topic, although it can also fall under ARPA funding, and that is access to reliable internet, which has been an issue in rural parts of the county as well as the nation. During the pandemic, the need for reliable internet rose to the forefront. What is your plan to address the inequalities and help county residents get online? Mr. Wendel.
Well, you know, I'm in a very unique position. And again, today we were talking. Again, there was a press release that went out today. The FCC does have emergency relief to homes and families for $50 to $75 off of their bill. When the money from ARPA first started, we had a meeting in March 23rd of this year asking both mayors to come in. We sat down with DFT Communications. That was about 3 weeks after we had already met with them, my ARPA team and myself. How do we bring broadband internet across the county? DFT was a local group. We want to make sure we give them the opportunity. We also met with Windstream. They're looking at how we can spread broadband across the county. This is a thing that this is something we're working on. You know, that originally, we got to remember, ARPA was focused on water, sewer, and broadband. You know, since then, it's morphed into everything under the sun. But we focused on those, and that was our primary focus coming out. Obviously, it's been stated, you know, again, in this debate, my opponent said, it doesn't matter. They already have internet in the city and in the two cities and metropolitan areas. But the people in Panama, the people in Sherman, the people in Frewsburg, there are parts of Lakewood that have very spotty internet access. That's what we're looking to provide. We have money there, part of this FCC commission. That's what I'm ready to do. That's why I put myself and asked myself to be on this commission and was appointed, is so we can utilize the access of that committee in bringing broadband to this county. Today you saw, we already released a press release showing everyone how to access this funding.
Mr. Green, are those the answers?
Let's go back to the $8 million. Well, we could have spent the $8 million on expanding broadband in the areas of Chautauqua County that needed it. Instead, we're doing a sewage treatment line that's going to serve, you keep bringing it up, you know, 12 millionaires from Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and the Field of Dreams Convention Center that you keep talking about. There were so many great ways to spend the money, and instead, you know, we had a legislature that met with the county executive in secret with select people, and they did not come up with great plans. Didn't talk to people in Jamestown. Yes, he says, I talked to the mayor. You know, did he talk to the sewage treatment plant operators? He talked to the south and center sewage treatment plant operators, but he didn't talk to the sewage treatment plant operators in any one of the metropolitan cities, even though a member of the city legislature was on the committee. I'm at a loss.
Mr. Wendel, I'll give you a few seconds to rebut that. You know, I guess what we're going to get is this, you know, rhetorical opposition that we didn't reach out. We reached out, and I think the quote was, as the mayor sits here, you don't need to carve out anything for the city. We're all set. So we focused. We extended those offers. And since then, high criticism of my ARPA funding, but yet not one phone call has been made, not one extension of anything has been brought to my office. Yet, the city of Dunkirk just asked us, we need $20,000 for a weed harvester. I haven't received a phone call. I haven't received an email, nothing. Only through back channels we're asking for this assistance. So again, we're not telling anybody we're not going to help, but I think we need to be forward in this. Again, we're willing to work, we're willing to help, and we are going to make sure we do whatever we can to expand, going back to the beginning statement, is expanding that broadband in this county and making it more accessible to every resident.
Mr. Green, any further
Nothing
rebuttal?
further on broadband. I'd be glad to talk about a lot of other subjects, but no broadband.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
We'll get to that. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Terry. Recently, there's been a push from some in the county to create what's called the constitutional sanctuary in what petitioners and several protesters would say would be a refuge to those seeking to avoid the state's COVID-19 mandates, like the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers as an example. Where do you stand on this issue and why? Mr. Green.
I could not believe the county executive last night was part of that proposal. That Cattaraugus County is a so-called constitutional county. What developers are going to come into a county that has backward thinking like that sits there and says, hey, gee, let's have a constitutional county so, everybody that doesn't want to get vaccinated can come to Chautauqua County. Everybody that doesn't want to wear a mask. We need to be forward thinking. This is just an absurd idea. The only companies we're going to be attracting will be companies that produce pillows or produce or Confederate flags. This is not a good idea. It's a bad look. It just doesn't make sense. I realize I'm going to have 100 people protesting in front of my house now, but the truth is that it just doesn't make sense.
Mr. Green, thank you. Mr. Wendel, where do you stand on this?
Well, where I stand was, again, this is a constitutional county, so what we have said and what the legislation proposes is we will support and defend the Constitution of the state of New York and the Constitution of the United States, which is an oath that I took and I uphold to the utmost. That's merely what this is saying. We're not saying we're making Confederate flags and we're harboring or insulting the people that want to protect rights as backward thinking. What we are doing is protecting all New Yorkers. This is not going to be a haven for those who want to avoid the mandates. This is going to be our county's commitment, as was Cattaraugus County, to uphold the Constitution, to uphold the oath we all took as elected officials.
Mr. Green, would you like to rebut?
Certainly. I mean, hey, I took the biggest oath, didn't I? And that's when I joined the United States Army. I understand oaths. I understand responsibility. When somebody came up to me in the United States Army a few times and brought this gun that put all these, vaccines in my arm, I had no idea what it was doing, but that was my job. That was my duty. He's giving cover to people that will not get vaccinated. And maybe they would have gotten vaccinated if he wasn't giving cover to them. He's telling these people, it's okay, we're a constitutional county, you don't have to do this. It's my health we're talking about. It's those of us that have been vaccinated. It's our health we're talking about. You're protecting the people that are spreading the disease. And again, we went to 200 dead yesterday.
Mr. Wendel.
I think we want to talk about a mistruth. I don't think I've asked anybody who doesn't want to get the vaccine to come to Chautauqua County. We're not harboring anybody. We're not hiding anybody. The vaccine is a choice. The same people that say, my body, my choice, are the ones demanding a vaccine. What I've asked, and the governor has heard my voice very loud, along with the 18 other county executives in New York State, the mandate for healthcare workers is overburdening. It's creating another healthcare crisis that is getting more and more difficult. Lakewood Fire Department waited 2 hours. 2 hours to drop off a patient because we can't get enough staff because of this. It's their choice, I understand that, okay? But again, this mandate, we're not mandating teachers, we're not mandating anyone else. These people that were our frontline workers are now being told, we don't need you anymore. But we do not tell people to come here and harbor those who don't want the vaccine.
Thank you. Julia?
Okay. For our next question, we're seeing we've talked a lot about workforce shortages in the news, and we're seeing this remain an issue nationally and locally as well. Even after the end of, we heard that when supplemental federal unemployment ended, that we would see people going back to work. So what do you see the county being able to do to assist businesses dealing with these shortages or in helping people get back into the workforce? And we'll start with Mr. Wendel.
Well, it's interesting. Today we just talked about it in the legislature. $300,000 is going to be going to the Workforce Investment Board to encourage and continue a program we had for paid 12-week internships for individuals here in Chautauqua County to get into the job force. If they like the job, hopefully get hired on. Several times, probably about half a dozen cases of students that go to the P-TECH Academy are employed after an internship. Several kids are ready. They're chomping at the bit to graduate because as soon as they do, they have a job at Rand or at Cummins. We need to expand those projects. I've been working with Bill Smock, the principal up there. I talked to Daniel DeMart. There's a factory adjacent or very close to the campus in JCC. Can we expand that and include Jamestown Public Schools into a more technical-driven, hands-on academy? I walked into Penn State Barron today and was blown away by their manufacturing technology. We have that here. We have been teaching people how to weld. I could think of 2 cases. One who was hired by the county after leaving as one of my students was taught welding, go back. We're increasing the dialogue. We're working hand in hand with JCC and PTech to expand these projects, getting kids into internships and then to employable positions.
Mr. Green, what would you do to help businesses deal with shortages in employees or helping people get back into the workforce?
Well, obviously, we need to get the workers to where they need to be. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. Brought it up before, our carts bus system. I mean, the Wells Ice Cream plant in Dunkirk would like to have a 3rd shift. They have advertisements in Buffalo. They are looking for workers, and if we have workers in other places in the county, we should be running a bus system that is robust and doesn't just operate for what seems to be for getting people to medical appointments or getting people to the county office building. There's opportunities here to work with Fredonia State and Jamestown Community College, and there's opportunities for internships, certainly internships with, getting kids in high schools and even colleges to be able to go work hand in hand. That's what workforce development should be all about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wendell, you have 60 seconds for rebuttal.
Well, certainly, we talked about carts. Ironically enough, the Wells incident early on was detected because we were transporting an employee from Wells to our mission here in Jamestown. But CARTS has received over $2.7 million in rebranding and purchasing new buses. We're looking at rewrapping the buses we have, making it more attractive. We're working with JCC. We're expanding these opportunities, working hand in hand to get the ridership increased. CARTS will be there to provide more than just appointments for people and trips to the county office buildings. We are going to make this an opportunity to get people to their jobs. It's unique. These rural communities, like ours, are usually struck because we don't have that robust system you do in a metropolitan area. All it takes is a phone call. If Wells wants to run a 3rd shift, mark my words, we can make sure that we get arrangements made to increase that CARTS line and make it affordable to those employees should they need it.
Thank you. Mr. Green, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, it's interesting that he brought up that we found out about the huge COVID outbreak at Dunkirk Wells Ice Cream plant in Dunkirk from a carts driver. Chautauqua County had shut down. They discontinued having weekend reporting and weekend receiving of COVID issues. We were behind on Wells Ice Cream. We were behind on that. People had nowhere to turn. It was another example of the failed leadership of the current county executive.
Thank you.
Another question and another topic. It came up during the city council debate earlier, but the issue of poverty has been a big one in the city of Jamestown. However, there are pockets of poverty pretty much everywhere in Chautauqua County. Wherever you look, even in Lakewood, which has been fairly affluent down through the years, there are pockets of poverty. How would your administration address the poverty issues where about 30% of our population lives in it? Mr. Green, I'll let you take that one first.
Well, obviously, we can't keep doing what we're doing because what we're doing isn't working. We do talk the same language. maybe, you know, it's kind of like one person's talking French and another is talking English. I feel like workforce development means getting jobs to people that are impoverished. There's some people that are impoverished, we got to go another step, and we have to, you know, get the churches involved, and we have to get our social services organizations involved. We see a lot of that in Jamestown and in Dunkirk, and we need to have support structures for the people that are there. We also need to return, the Republicans have taken services out of Dunkirk and out of Jamestown, and they moved them into the county office building. I mean, I worked there. It was, you know, it's up there. It's got to be like, you know, on top of each other. We need to have services available. Social services needs to be more readily available in downtown Dunkirk, downtown Jamestown. And now we're seeing, unfortunately, Fredonia is being shown as being one of the impoverished communities of Western New York. So we need to do a better job there. Again, conclusion, can't keep doing what we're doing.
Mr. Wendel, I want to give you a chance to address that.
Well, certainly, I think how do we address that is, you know, is moving forward. You know, again, we're getting the rhetorical response, just we need to do it different or do it better. South County Office Building is right across the street. We have Health and Human Services and Social Services right here in Jamestown. We have social services at the Graff Building and staying in the Graff Building in downtown Dunkirk. We haven't moved anything out. We may have removed a couple of people here and there, but we still have forward-facing people that need social services in our metropolitan areas, and we're not going to change that. We understand where the population is, and we understand how to do that. We also need to make sure we're reaching out, finding out what the barriers are, reaching out with our community agencies, reaching out with our churches as well. What are the struggles these people are facing? Is it transportation? Is it childcare? We need to make those connections and make sure we have every opportunity for these individuals to connect. Our Health and Human Services and Social Services are already working with individuals. We're buying them their food. We're buying them clothing. We're buying them toiletries so they can take care of themselves. We are connecting those people. We need to get them the help, get them the employment they need, and get them back on the right track.
Mr. Green, I'll give you a minute to.
Yeah, we're sharing services for people that are looking for a hand up. He makes it sound something so totally different than that. You know, to suggest that the county workers haven't been moved in masses to Mayville is just not true. I mean, I was at a manager's meeting one day, and Christine Schuyler was saying, "Hey, now that we got people having to come to Mayville, they're better at keeping their appointments, you know, because we've made it so difficult for them."
Mr. Wendel, I give you 30 seconds to
I guess I don't understand
respond to that.
By bringing people to Mayville, we're keeping appointments. I beg to differ. We still have a large amount of population of county workforce in both of our metropolitan areas serving our social service needs, and we're going to continue to do that. That's our obligation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chautauqua Lake is quite possibly one of the county's best natural resources. With the amount of tax dollars and tourism it brings to our region, it has played a vital part in our area's development over the past century. For you, how do we address issues within the lake like harmful algae? We'll start with Mr. Wendel.
Well, first of all, we're doing it. Again, you know, we'll hear the rhetorical rebuttal. I think we called the MOU a Seinfeld episode. Well, just quite the opposite. We had a memorandum of agreement that we knew had issues. We changed that to a memorandum of understanding. Every community that borders Chautauqua Lake has signed on. Every single community. Many did not last year. The CLP, the CLA, the watershed all supported this new MOU. What it does is it brings us together, working together for a viable plan to help this lake. We brought the Jefferson Project in. What does the Jefferson Project do? They align us with the Friends of Lake George, Skinny Atlas Lake, and Chautauqua Lake. We are one of 12 HAB lakes, harmful algal bloom lakes in New York State. Governor Cuomo did allocate $60 million, and as soon as that happened, we grouped these three together and we started to apply. The only problem is money wasn't there. We sat down with then Lieutenant Governor Hochul, how can we get the funding? Very difficult and challenging, but we have worked together, collaborated with lakes across the state. The Jefferson Project brings empirical scientific data, along with Bowling Green University, along with NC State, along with Oneonta State, and Fredonia. We have scientists in here learning about this lake so we can plan and manage the lake. Not just take care and maintain it, but to manage it and make it more effective and cleaner in the future.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Green.
What I said was that his entire agreement of understanding was like Seinfeld itself, it's a show about nothing. Why do I say it's a show about nothing? Because we're allowing people to dump chemicals in the lake, and we got people that have signed on to this, and they've said, hey, I'm opposed to chemicals. I'm opposed to chemicals. He's not opposed to chemicals. There's no way that I believe that we should be putting chemicals in the lake until we get better studies and better scientists coming in and telling that this is an okay thing to do. He's in favor of the lake tax. I'm opposed to the lake tax. I'm a fiscal conservative. He parades as a fiscal conservative. The lake is important. Now, I have no doubt. I live on the lake. You know, I think you live somewhat close to the lake. I mean, we all know that it's the economic engine of Chautauqua County, and we know that it needs to be protected. And you know, but we need to have serious answers here. And allowing someone in Bemis Bay to dump chemicals into the lake is just lunacy.
Mr. Wendel, would you like to respond?
Well, certainly. You know, one of the things we looked at is we talked about we need to change. Procelacor is one of the newest high-tech herbicides used out there that can be used within close proximity of water intakes. So the science is there. We have changed. We've been using chemicals in Chautauqua Lake for hundreds of years, well, not hundreds of years, for over the last 100 years. Chemicals have been used in herbicides, and we have made them better. They've been more effective and more surgical in how we're applying them. The DEC came in, the Region 9 came in and have been hearing things in the opposition of herbicides. And their representative came and took a tour of the lake about 3 weeks ago and said, I have no idea it was this bad. The science is there, but the people that are opposed are very vocal. We understand that, okay? There are more than one way to take care of the lake. I'm not saying, the other piece is a lake tax. I don't agree with the lake tax. What I stated was, I want funding for the lake. If that's a boat registration, again, I'm not in favor of high property taxes. I don't believe that's the way we're going to generate the funds.
Thank you. Mr. Green, would you like to respond?
Well, the rebuttal is simple. He talks about chemicals in the lake, and he acts like, gee, these chemicals know to stay in Bemis Bay, that they're not going to be elsewhere. I mean, we got to have one management. If the decision is to put chemicals on the lake, well, then it should be decision to put chemicals everywhere. He says DEC came in and said, I can't believe how bad the lake is. Well, you know, then that tells you that we got a problem and that it hasn't been addressed.
Thank you. Julia?
Just for clarification, herbicides are used throughout the lake. Permits are granted across. This isn't just Bemis Bay. Throughout the South and North Basin, permits are issued for herbicide use. It's not just focused in Bemis Bay.
Thank you. We are now going to the part of the program where the candidates get to ask each other a question. So what we have here is that opponents will be given 90 seconds to respond, and the questioner has 60 seconds for rebuttal, with the opponent then having 30 seconds for a final rebuttal. And question A, so candidate A, which is Mr. Green, you'll be able to ask the question first.
So my first question is, do you think that your government has been ignoring Jamestown and Dunkirk and Fredonia? Do you think that we need to change how we operate and we need to be doing a better job of sharing services? Would you agree that the industrial agency, the county's IDA, should be doing a better job working with the cities than they are now?
Do we need to do a better job? The IDA will probably find criticism, was very instrumental in getting funding for what was now Denny's. I believe Mr. DeJoy had a venture downtown in Jamestown. We are working collaboratively with the city of Jamestown and the city of Dunkirk. We just engaged in a $20,000 project that we gave the city money from the IDA to apply for DRI, which could in turn bring $10 million to the city of Dunkirk. So our IDA is working hand in hand with both cities. No one has ever called me and I've said, no, can't do it. We gladly entertain, do we want to work better? We could always improve things, but to say that we're not working with the cities, it's not true. We've worked with agencies who want to come into the city of Jamestown, the city of Dunkirk, and again, just to reiterate, you know, $20,000 the IDA was able to put forth for the city of Dunkirk to apply for a $10 million DRI that will develop not only the downtown core, but the harbor front as well.
Okay. You have 60 seconds, Mr. Green, for a rebuttal.
Well, first off, it was friendlies, and that's a pretty poor example of helping out the city of Jamestown. I mean, we got to have bigger and better examples than that. You know, no, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Mr. Wendel, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to add any final.
I just, you know, again, I apologize for misquoting the building, but to say there was a poor example, that we're working with them all the time. Again, no one has ever been refused. Our IDA has been a catalyst. The Small Business Development, or the EBA rather, excuse me, has given our county $10.5 million, and they want to give us more because of the effectiveness. In 9 months, we got $10.5 million out to businesses throughout this county, in cities and villages and towns alike. And the federal government recognizes that, and we are the poster child for that project.
Thank you. Mr. Wendel, it's now your opportunity to ask Mr. Green a question.
Well, certainly. Mr. Green, in the recent debate, you mentioned that as county executive, you would cut off funding to small villages. In essence, take away their ability to provide services because you feel that they should not be or have that form of government. If elected, is it your intent to take away village funding and force them to either raise taxes or dissolve?
Well, we talked about one small village, and that one small village was Panama, and Panama has no government. They get a sales tax share, and that sales tax share they use for providing garbage service to their village residents. They have no highway department. They have a town clerk that takes the minutes for a 3-member village board. Yeah, we should be shutting off the sales tax and turn the sales tax to Harmony, which they're a part of. And yeah, we should find ways to get these little tiny villages out of business. And like I said, I'm not talking about the large villages like Lakewood or the villages of like Fredonia or Faulkner or Celeron. I'm not talking about going businesses, but you know, if you got a business, a village like Panama, I was talking about at the time was a county executive that was proactive in reducing government. As you know, for 22 years, retired now as election commissioner, I would go around the state and I would always tell people, you know, we love government in Chautauqua County. We got a lot of it. 27 towns. Same as County of Erie, which is 7 times our population. 2 cities, 13 villages. We got a lot of government, 18 school districts. Got a lot of government, and we need to be, when we got super small places like Panama, yeah, we should be looking at finding ways to get them out of business.
Thank you. Mr. Wendel, you have a minute for a rebuttal.
Well, I think it's just very disappointing that a person that would want to run for the highest elected position in the county would like to dissolve groups that he doesn't feel fit his mold or his criteria as viable government. You know, in the village of Lakewood, it was a permissive referendum, and 3-1 village residents voted to maintain their village. These residents maintain those villages. That's what they asked for. It is not our position to go in and take them over or to dissolve them because they don't fit our mold or they're not good enough. Very sad.
Mr. Green, you have 30 seconds if you wish to do a final rebuttal.
This is what leadership is. This is what leadership looks like. You know, you got somebody that's afraid to go out there and tell somebody something they don't want to hear. Well, you know, then you should re-elect my opponent.
Okay. Thank you. We are now to our closing statements. Candidates will have 2 minutes each for your closing remarks. As we flipped a coin at the beginning, Mr. Green had opted to go last, so we will begin closing remarks with Mr. Wendel.
Thank you. And again, I'd like to thank everyone and take this time to thank WRFA, Media One, and Western New York News Now for the opportunity to share my success, my passion, and my commitment, and my vision for the future of Chautauqua County. I would like to thank those who I've invited tonight and supported me here this evening. Together, we can achieve more, and I will continue with my efforts to provide everyone with the best opportunities Chautauqua County has to offer. I presented what we have achieved in just 1 year, and I can commit to you my dedication to increasing our businesses, growing our economy, strengthening our communities, and investing in our future. The future is bright here in Chautauqua County, and I'm committed to making this county a beacon of success. I'm not using persuasive rhetorical statements. My message is clear. I'm passionate about this job. I'm grateful for the position that I am in. And most importantly, I enjoy what I do. I do not take anything for granted. Every day, I realize how blessed I am to have this position. I truly feel honored and will work hard to continue my strong leadership. Thank you for asking these great questions today because they are very thought-provoking. This evening, everyone had a chance to hear what we have to say. The election is coming up. There'll be 9 days of early voting, and that begins this Saturday at noon until 5 p.m. Hours and locations are located at votechautauqua.com, and the county has 4 sites available. Those sites are the Board of Election Office in Mayville, the Jackson Center here in Jamestown, which is a new location, Chautauqua Mall, and the Dunkirk Fairgrounds. I'd like to thank every one of you for being here, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wendel. Mr. Green, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
I'm a doer. You didn't see me the whole night looking on a piece of paper about a speech that I've written in advance. I'm a person that can talk about all the issues, and I can talk intelligently about these issues. We need a change. My website is rebootchq.com. I urge people to go there. I welcome anyone who wants to join my march to change what we do in Mayville.
Thank you, Mr. Green, and also thank you to you both again for being part of this debate tonight. And thank you to our audience, whether you're online, here in person, or listening over the air. You will be able to hear this presentation online on WRFALP.com, as well as view it on WNYNewsNow.com and hear rebroadcasts on WJTN as well as WRFA. On behalf of our media partners, I would like to thank Terry Frank and Justin Gould for being here with us tonight. I'd also like to thank our team here that has been part of these debates, Cranky Play Productions, our technical director, Owen Murphy, Gavin Paternity, Jason Sample, all the WRFA team, as well as our supporters and co-workers at the Reginald A. Center for the Arts. Thank you for being with us tonight, and good night.